guess we can start off. One of the things that we, I guess, want to know is, are there any like intricacies to like the technical process of the Terminator Gene, or something that might institute it in that might deal with the implications? So, is there anything that deals with the technical process that maybe we should know, besides kind of the general facets that may have, or?
Well, it's I suppose looking at it objectively, it's a wonderful piece of technology. It's based on the hybrid cross, which is used for many plants, many crop plants, producing the seed for the farmer. So when you produce a hybrid plant, you have two inbreds, and then the seed company will cross them together to form the hybrid, and then the hybrid seed will be sold to the farmer. So with the Terminator technology, in one of the inbreds, you have the Terminator Gene. But it's non-functional. Okay, but in the other inbred, you have another gene, which will, when they're combined together into the hybrid, activate the Terminator function. The seed which is produced is viable. Okay, so it will grow up, it will give a crop, but the seed that hybrid crop produces will be inviable, so it will no longer grow. The technology itself was developed, let's see, probably about 25 years ago. The two basic technologies for genetic engineering in plants, and they have been used more or less exclusively for generating all of the genetically modified crops which we use today, from the big four: cotton, canola, maize, and soybean. So it's a wonderful piece of technology, but as I say, technology is neutral. And, one can admire it from that particular viewpoint.
So.
Do you mind if I pause it so we can move the door so you don't get sound?
Okay.
Did you want to bring that chair in? So you can
Do you want to sit down?
No,
I'll
be just
over.
fine.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll be just fine. Thank you, though. Just want to make sure.
The method itself, I think, is patented, but it is fairly straightforward. If you can see this here, let's say I'll send you the PowerPoint. In A here we have a normal cross between two plant lines that produces a viable seed. So when you plant it, as you see here, it produces a plant. So the viability, of course, extends from one generation to the next. Here we have the Terminator function now in one of these plants. So the seed that they produce is no longer viable. So the subsequent generations stop right here. This was first developed, of course, several years ago. A joint venture of was it United States Department of Agriculture and Delta Pine and something or other, before they were bought out by Monsanto. So this is the specific Terminator here. Again, in one of the plants, this is the Terminator function here. There's a piece of DNA just in front of it, and that stops it from being expressed. But in the other plant, which you cross to get the seed, this function here will remove this interfering piece of DNA here, and that will in turn lead to the activation of the Terminator gene.
Okay.
So it looks simple, but there's a lot of science behind it, and the manipulations which go into it can be really quite intricate. But a lot is possible with plants these days. Think of golden rice. That too was a marvelous piece of technology.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, that's great.
That was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I guess so. Now that we have a big kind of outlook on the technological aspect of it, what are your personal workings in kind of genetically modified crops and stuff? Like, do you have a background?
Yeah, I got interested in plants when I first moved to this country, and I worked at Cornell, working on yeast. And yeast was the kind of stepping stone up to plants. And I began working at Cornell, but eventually moved to Iowa State University to work on corn. Where else in the world would you go to work on corn? We were involved in several projects. Some of them were Pioneer Hybrid, which had their own research facility out at Des Moines. And then in the final couple of years I was there, we were working on the beginnings of the Golden Rice Project. This was a huge project. Several laboratories were funded mostly by the Rockefeller Foundation. Our work was with corn. Corn was going to be used as a source of genes for producing yellow rice. The idea is that many people in the world, especially in the global south, come down with vitamin A deficiencies. There are about 1 million cases, I think, every year, and according to the World Health Organization, about 300,000 to 400,000 actually die of vitamin A deficiency. It leads to blindness, which can be permanent, and in severe cases, and especially for kids under 5, it's fatal. And the problem is, in order to get enough vitamin A, you have to have a source of beta-carotene. Beta-carotene is found in all parts of the plant, the green parts, in fruits and so forth. But of course, for most of the global south, vegetables and fruits are seasonal, and the staple is rice. Now, rice seed doesn't make beta-carotene, but corn does. That's why it's yellow. Okay, there's significant amounts of beta-carotene. So our job here was to try and identify the genes which were responsible for beta-carotene in corn, and then utilize this knowledge to try and for other people to genetically engineer rice so it would do the same thing. As it turned out, I mean, it was just a peripheral side project. Our technology really was not used, but we did at least identify the genes, especially the controlling elements, which are responsible for beta-carotene in maize.
That's interesting. And I mean, I guess the fact that you did that from a standpoint of nutrition and malnutrition and stuff like that. What are your thoughts on kind of the outlook of genetically modified crops? There's a lot of contention over whether or not that's like genetically modified foods is the way to go to kind of secure nutrition in areas that might have low nutrition, and it can help cure food deserts and ensure food security. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, I don't mean to be pedantic here, but it is something that needs to be cleared up. When we talk about genetically modified crops, we're talking about basically 11,000 years of human history, because genetic modification is through traditional breeding practices, it can be through cell culture, and it can be through genetic engineering. So as such, I've got really no objections against genetically modified crops. It's of course the basis of human survival and the development of human civilization. But with genetically engineered crops, I have very large reservations indeed. First of all, from a scientific point of view, it's very limited. There are basically very few traits which can be introduced into crops, because plants are very, very complex. In many ways are much more complex than small furry animals and in humans. And secondly, there are biotechnologies which do not involve genetic engineering, which can be more productive and more applicable, especially to the global south, where most of the undernourishment and malnutrition occurs. And then, even then, the world hunger is such a complex thing, and to say, well, we have a technological fix here which involves Terminator plants, or it involves golden rice. Really, will not work. And I begin to suspect that there may be ulterior motives for these genetically engineered plants. Basically, I think it's to establish a seed monopoly by the big seed corporations like Monsanto, Archer Daniels Midland, and so forth. As far as the Terminator technology is concerned, I think it's obscene. Because it breaks with 11,000 years of human history. And the invention of agriculture, which I spend a little bit of time talking about, is one of our great technological feats. If you consider the wild-type relatives of some of our staple plants like maize, wheat, you look at these wild-type plants and you think, how on earth did anybody develop these into the high-yielding crops that they have now begun? And it was a marvelous feat that the invention of agriculture occurred probably about 11,000 years ago in 7 to 8 distinct corners of the globe. It developed independently, went along with the domestication of animals, and of course with the invention and then the establishment of agriculture, you have the beginnings of civilization, you have the invention of writing, the foundations of our major religions, and everything else that you associate with the human experience of over the past 11,000 years. And in the global south, where most of the farmers are concentrated, and we're talking here about probably a third of the planet's population, anywhere between 1.4 to 2 billion people. That culture has been passed on through generations over those 11,000 to 12,000 years, and it involves sharing the knowledge as well as the seed as well. Sharing of the seed and knowledge has produced the diversity of crop plants which have enabled agriculture to be so successful. And so here we have a Western corporation coming along and saying, that's the end of 11,000 years of human history. We will now own everything. You see my point? Even with the golden rice, that too was a specious project, I think. There are better ways of solving vitamin A deficiency rather than making a patented yellow rice. Give people basic oils which are rich in vitamin A. Sometimes these cost about 5 cents a bottle, 10 cents a bottle, if they're distributed by aid agencies such as the World Health Organization or UNESCO. You don't need genetically engineered plants. That became apparent to me as working on this in the 1980s when I was walking through the supermarket picking up cans of fruit, pineapple, guavas and so forth. These were all being exported from those very same countries where vitamin A deficiency was endemic. You see, the problem to me is socio-economic. It has nothing to do with science. Look at the figures from the United Nations, the Food and Agriculture Organization. We're producing more food on a global scale than is necessary to feed the entire population, probably to the extent of about 1.5 times more food than is necessary for the average caloric intake that everybody must have. And yet, over the past couple of years, as you know, the prices of staples have gone up. The prices of staples gone up. If you look at wheat, for example, about 10 years ago, it was running anywhere between $4 to $6 a bushel on the global market. But at the time the global food crisis broke out in 2008, it was running at $28 a bushel. So that's a 7 times increase in price. And the irony is that that was a record year for producing wheat. Never before had farmers throughout the globe produced that quantity of wheat, and yet the prices were skyrocketing so high that people simply couldn't afford to buy it. So it's a socio-economic matter to me, one of distribution. So therefore the solutions are not through science, although they well could be in some situations, but rather they have to be political solutions.